Hey, talk to me.
Well, let's see. He's dead. He's dead. She's dead. Mr. De La Cruz is nowhere to be found. And she saw something. She was there. But what am I gonna do? Bring her in? She'll be dead in a week. No one's saying a thing. And suddenly nobody speaks English either.
Well, the Spanish is halfway decent, isn't it?
My Spanish, it sucks, but that's not the problem. It's just nobody's talking. Nobody's saying a thing, and I don't blame them. But somebody knows something. She knows what happened. But what am I gonna do? Haul her in? Get her killed?
Welcome to Kermode Uncut. Here's a slightly strange tale. A few weeks ago, I reviewed a film called Exposed, which was nominally a Keanu Reeves cop thriller, directed by Declan Dale. Although, as I said at the time of the review, Declan Dale was a pseudonym. It was a name put on the movie after the original writer-director G. Malik Linton had his name taken off it because he didn't like the final cut of the film. Anyway, in my review, which was a real sort of thumbs down, I said you can't pass any judgment on what the director originally intended, because what we have here is so obviously recut. It's so obviously a car crash of a movie. Perhaps the original version was a masterpiece. Who can tell? All we know for a fact is that what we have here doesn't work. It just makes no sense. As I said, it's a kind of cop thriller with Keanu Reeves and weird bits with space aliens in it. Anyway, after I'd done the review, one of the producers of the film got in touch and said, look, would you like to see the original version, the version as the film was intended to be seen by its director, because, you know, we'd like you to see it. So I said yes. I was intrigued because I'd mentioned in the review the case of Donald Cammell's Wild Side, which was a film which was recut against the director's wishes. It was his final film. And when it first came out, it was a terrible, sleazy kind of lesbian erotic thriller that you couldn't imagine there was an interesting film in there. But after Donald Cammell's death, Frank Mazzola, the original editor, went back and re-edited the film, and suddenly it was transformed into something quite miraculous. I mean, a really interesting Donald Cammell film. And I remembered having worked on the reconstruction of Richard Stanley's Dust Devil years and years ago, and that was put out in America under a changed title, had all the strange elements taken out of it. It was turned into this kind of linear serial killer movie that didn't make any sense, wasn't interesting, wasn't intriguing, and yet I was convinced there was a more interesting film in there when Richard Stanley turned up at my house with a bunch of videotapes with the missing scenes and said, look, this is what the film should look like. And eventually he managed to get it reconstructed, and we got Dust Devil, the director's cut, which was a really interesting film. So last night I sat down and watched Daughter of God, which is the original title for Exposed. And what an interesting experience it was. It's not a perfect film, and incidentally, I don't think it's a masterpiece, but what it is a film which is intriguing and coherent. Rather than being the story of a cop attempting to solve the mystery of his partner's murder, it now becomes a totally different film about a young woman, played by Ana de Armas, who is visited by what she believes to be angels, and the film is actually about her journey and her family and what's happened to her, with Keanu Reeves as a much more peripheral character. I mean, he's still important, he's still a big part of the drama, but he is not the center of the drama. In the drama as we have it now, it's actually a story about faith, about horror, about delusion, about repressing something that comes out in a weird hallucinatory way. I mean, for one thing, it's a far less mainstream film, it's a far odder film, but it's a film that makes sense. See, here's the thing I don't understand. Having watched the film that I watched last night, with all its flaws, I said I have certain reservations about it, I did come out of it thinking it has a vision, it has an idea, it's an intriguing attempt to put something very complex on screen. Why would you take that and turn it into something that it was never intended to be? Terry Gilliam once quoted that famous phrase to me, that a camel is a horse designed by a committee. And Exposed is a real camel of a movie. It's a film when you can tell it was never meant to look like that. It's cringing and embarrassing and terrible, but weirdly enough, in Daughter of God, scenes which had seemed terribly clunky when I saw them in Exposed suddenly seemed to make sense. As I say, It's not that the original version is a triumph, but it is a coherent piece of work. It's a film whose flaws are part of what makes it work. The strange elements, the angels, the flashbacks, the weird sort of surreal elements, all knit together in something which is moving in one direction, as opposed to in Exposed, when it just looks like Keanu Reeves is making it up as it goes along, and the film appears to have been edited with a chainsaw. If you saw Exposed in the cinema, and very few people did, believe me, you have not seen the film that it was attempting to be. And here's a final thought. I watched Daughter of God last night, and I'm still thinking about it now. I'm still thinking about the contradictions, the things about it that worked, the things that didn't work, the things that enchanted me, the things that troubled me, the things that inspired me, the things that disappointed me. As far as Exposed was concerned, 5 minutes after the screening, I could remember virtually nothing about it. Why would you take something that interesting and turn it into something that rubbish? One of the reasons it's been put forward is, well, in the more rubbish version, it's a Keanu Reeves movie. In its original version, it wasn't. And I think that's unfair to Keanu Reeves, because actually, in Daughter of God, he's perfectly decent. He's just not the center of the film.
I gotta make a wish.